You see what sending out them negative waves did, Moriarty?
But oddball, I did try and tell them, but they won't listen. I tried.
Sure.
But I did try.
Oh, man. Don't hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
But I can't force them to listen. I can't.
Always with the negative waves, Moriarty. Always with the negative waves.
Have a little faith, baby. Have a little faith.
But I keep trying. Oddball, I keep trying. But they won't listen. They won't tune in. They really won't.
Why don't you knock it off with them negative waves? Why don't you dig how beautiful it is out here? Why don't you say something righteous and hopeful for a change?
Tune in to Awake Radio for your positive waves.
Welcome to Alchemical Connections, and I'm your host, Chrissy McMahon, and I would like to thank everyone at Awake Radio and shazizradio.com for making this broadcast possible today, Thursday, November 14th, 2013. Well, I actually wrote that. In case you're not aware, Awake Radio opens a sister site at awakeradio.us. and encourage you to check it out and join the free membership page. You can also check out the host and schedule at awakeradio.us, and if you feel you have something to say and are interested in broadcasting, there's a link to join the growing team of exceptional hosts here at awakeradio.us. I'd like to remind everyone that Shout It From the Mountain is still accepting shouts, which we read on the air at the email account shoutitfromthemountain24@gmail.com. Nemiel, Nemus, Amaranthi is our special guest today on Alchemical Connections. Nemus is an astrological profiler and is the owner of astropsychology.co.uk, a website that is dedicated to astropsychology. Nemus shares talks on astropsychology and offers the service of astropsychological portraits, which is like an astrological natal chart reading, but focuses mainly on enhancing individuality, self-acceptance, and recognition of the inner world of the mind as the source of our cognitive and behavioral functions, similar to cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness meditation. Nemus has been sharing videos via the channel youtube.com/Mr. Unity Consciousness under the title of Astropsychology, astropsychology.co.uk, since January 2013. And started as a general study of astrology, astrotheology, philosophy, and existentialism, but evolved into astropsychology in the past 5 or 6 months, and is now devout in this paradigm. The main objective is to focus on astropsychology as a legitimate alternative therapy to modern-day psychiatry, which seems to have the ideology that depression and other mental disorders are not optimal in brain functioning. So it seems as an imperfection based on the idea that happiness should be constant, rather than accepting that polarized states of the mind are a necessity and should be embraced. Instead of repressing the natural flow of the mind with medication and endless branding of illness in the medical publications like the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Nemus is an astrological profiler and is the owner of astropsychology.co.uk. Now I'd like to welcome Nemus. Hello, Nemus. How are you this morning?
Hi, Chrissy. I'm great. Yeah, feeling good. Feeling good about this. Yeah.
Oh, awesome! I'm so grateful that we got connected, and I'm also very grateful for the work that you do on YouTube, because it provides a service and provides information.
It's
That you take years to study this astrology, and you're breaking it down, and you're giving it in very thorough and very common sense kind of ways, and it's related to the individual. So maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about how you got into this work, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started looking into the occult and spirituality about 2 years ago. It was after my mother had passed away, and I just started to ask existential and spiritual questions, and one thing led to another, and I started to look into the occult, and about a year later I started to get active online, and it just led to sharing my thoughts over the internet via YouTube, and then I set up my own websites, and here I am today. But it's only like about a year of study that I am involved in astrology in itself. So I've got through quite a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I looked at my channel as mainly a scrap pad. You know, instead of writing everything down, I'd sort of record what I'm thinking onto camera and then share it with people. So the idea was not to come across as a teacher and someone who's completed, or someone who is trying to teach other people things. It's more of a case of I'm putting out there where I'm at the moment, and then hoping to stimulate others and have a two-way feedback process. It all started off with philosophy and astrology to begin with, but I started to notice that we're all out there looking for answers to the universe and about ourselves, and there's a possibility that everything is interconnected and part of the same quantum field. But I found that it's much more dynamic to look at the way in which we gather the information and give information and receive information between ourselves as part of the answer, if there is an answer that we're looking for. So it's process that I mainly focus on, as opposed to looking for one solid answer. And astrology and astropsychology is one such paradigm that incorporates this process, that we've got separate parts of a whole that are all unique, all have their own individual functions, but they have agreed to operate as a whole, and they produce effect after effect after effect. So it's this constant reproduction of itself, which is very similar to the way in which we have the ability to change who we are by looking at ourselves through reflection on the self, and through dream interpretation and meditation and many other insightful techniques. So I look at everything as a work in progress, and try and come across that way, and remain open, and don't get caught in the trap of defending myself by just putting out there what it is that I'm thinking, and not stating opinions as facts. So I'm glad that you enjoy the channel, and it's good to have feedback and appreciation, and I want to be able to carry on doing what I'm doing, and so I incorporated a natal chart service that I charge a small fee, £20 per reading, and with that I give a full explanation of the natal chart from an astropsychological point of view that can be watched over and over again by the client over via YouTube, and with the client's permission I can share that reading via the channel, and other people can gain insights and new techniques on how to read their own charts, if it is that they want to tackle the hardest chart of all, which of course we all know is your own chart, because it's much easier to have somebody on the outside looking in than it is to actually be honest with yourself and accept things about yourself that you're not really that aware of. So it's usually better to have someone else read your chart to get the ball rolling, and to do other people's charts, because when you get aspects that are exactly the same as yours in somebody else's chart, for some reason, usually because you're detached from the values and any kind of denial, or find it difficult to look in, you're detached from that, and you're able to observe the aspect in a detached and neutral way and come up with something really insightful, which through sharing the experiences with each other, you can gain insights on yourself through other people by reading their charts. And that's what I think is just so great about astrology and astropsychology, because it's one such way where we can put an image on a table of a natal chart that's as unique as your fingerprint, and you can look at each other as equals. You know, we're all the manifestation of these aspects on the chart, and we can all look at each other in our pure ethereal objective form, you know. So it's great, and that's part of the passion for myself, to be able to connect with like-minded people who like to speak from the heart and enjoy philosophy and want to express themselves and accept themselves, and through the understanding of themselves pass on that knowledge to others. And this art form, you know, I don't look at astrology as a science. I don't look at it as hocus pocus or anything like that. From traditional, the media style astrology that we have in the West, it's mainly that I look at it as an art, that it's an art to be able to allow your intuition to flow into a process that's unchangeable. But in the West, we have a very material existence. We're quite materially well off. And in the East, where we have astrology paradigms like Vedic astrology, that comes from a culture where they are not generally that well off material in material terms, and so their outlook on astrology and the way that they interpret it is on a purely spiritual basis, but with the ideology that if you do good and restrict yourself in this life, there will be an afterlife where you'll be given you'll be given fruits in the afterlife, you know, and will have generally a better existence than the constrictions of this world. So it's a kind of life-denying philosophy with Vedic astrology. So I wanted the best of both worlds, that instead of having something that denies you from expressing yourself in this life, however, not wanting to focus mainly on the material side of things in our side of the world, in the West, such as career and career and money, for instance, being one of them, and also to move away from astrology being viewed as a kind of predictive system and fortune telling. I wanted something that was in the now and was able to recognize the self and the ego in symmetry with the process of the zodiac. To look at it all as one organism, one conscious functioning organism that people could relate to and understand the true manifestation of what they project into reality through the process of reflection. So it's about stripping away those all the conditions and looking beyond the ego and the material reality to what is real substance. However, keeping things in the now and just being more self-aware of who we are and that things are subject to change, you know, that's the one constant in the universe, that everything goes into motion, then it comes to a rest, and then it changes. And it's about the objective is to get the individual to accept who they are, what they are, and see that there isn't anything wrong with them, you know, because a lot of people who have times of crisis or go into depression and anxiety, they'll go to a doctor, they'll get mass medicated, they'll be put into an appointment-based system that takes away the self-responsibility of self-healing and of sharing, because it's kind of like that the person is waiting for an appointment all the time, and you know, they're given this medication and you think, oh well, the doctor knows best, so I don't have to confront this, the doctor will make it go away. So there's this sudden surrender of self-responsibility, and that's one of the other objectives of astropsychology, that I can not only attempt with the objective to make people see that there is absolutely nothing wrong with them, that depression and happiness are necessary to exist together, to understand ourselves, that, you know, ascension and descension are something that, a duality that is unavoidable, just like light and dark, and that they should be more aware of how they can best manipulate their natural talents and energies and their own expression to their benefit, instead of looking for external sources to make negative emotions or more undesirable states of being go away. So it's about accepting responsibility as well. Absolutely. And it all comes down to the individual to make the change. So and we've all got the tools to do such a thing, and we can, you know, by looking past the ego and looking into the self, we can do simple things such as give up smoking. You know, if I quit smoking, then that old version of myself now doesn't exist. The version that used to smoke now doesn't exist anymore. And this new person that doesn't smoke does. So that's ego dissolution, whereby we look within ourselves, we surrender the constructed version of ourselves that we have created, and we dissolve that ego and become something else. So it all comes down to you. You know, no one can make you quit smoking. Nobody can make you get out of a situation that is oppressive to you. It's all entirely down to you, and that's the salvation of astropsychology, I suppose, that I try and put across, that we all have talents, we all have the power to change, you know, and we're part of something that is an ongoing process. So there is no beginning to this process, and there is no end. It's the Ouroboros, it's the serpent eating its own tail, and I show the natal chart as a means of a visual aid to see yourself in relation to that process of the projection of the self through the ego, and then the ego reflecting into the self and back again. So it's kind of like I performed an experiment with a webcam. This is a good analogy for it. If you turn on a webcam that you can hold in your hand, and you turn the camera to look at the screen that is producing the image from that camera, you will see the camera looking at itself into infinity. And with every movement of the camera, you will see change all the way down into the image, and you will see that there is no beginning point and there is no end. It will just continually repeat the image of it looking at itself like a fractal design. So any minute change on the whole and of any of the parts is repeated through the image. And that's the analogy of the zodiac and the signs, which I see as the self, and then the houses of the zodiac, which are unchangeable, they do not move, however, they are the manifestation of the self, therefore the ego. And there's this constant reproduction of itself, and it incorporates the Vedic and Hindu outlook of panentheism, where we are all within God. So it's a being within a being within a being. So we can look at the zodiac and the signs and the houses, the zodiac being the cause of the effects down on earth and of our expression through the ego. However, it is still just an effect of something greater than it. So ourselves are the cause of our ego. However, the self is also part of the collective consciousness that is a higher power than it as well. So again, it's a paradigm that's incorporating Eastern and Western philosophies, however, still putting the emphasis on the individual, and also that this is an ongoing process and it's something to be mindful of and to understand where our energies lie and how best to manipulate them to our benefit, which is the end game, I suppose. And upon the completion of the reading, I also offer my friendship for for as long as you want it, whereby I can discuss all aspects of the chart with the person one-on-one, and to better help them understand the relative process, and how best they could use that to their benefit. And every single person that's had a reading has had massive improvement and more self-awareness, and people, a couple of them were probably just a little bit lost and confused and just needed some direction, and I used astrology and astropsychology to be able to explain every part of themselves, and it's like a filing cabinet for the different aspects of ourselves. So each house and each sign represents a different aspect of ourselves that we put into an order. And this again works with the idea that it's a timeless operation, that it's just a process, that there was no big bang, there was no conception at a single point, that it was just something that just was, that was planned, and then it looked at itself and then projected itself, and that process repeats. So the way that I get around the predictive side and of fortune telling, an assumption, is that I ask the client to not only give me the usual details of the date, the time and location, I also ask them to describe a little bit about themselves, and if there was any significant events in their life, or what it is that they want to know about themselves. And through the process of Jung word association, like Jungian word association, I then look for a pattern from that experience that they've given me, and I relate the planetary aspects with the dignities that they consist of with what they've told me or written down for me, and from that I then place the experience, actual result and effect, onto the wheel of the zodiac. So it's incredibly accurate, because it's not so much me just reading a chart and then I tell you things that like as if I was a psychic. It's not. I'm trying to move away from that. It's purely based on the idea in psychiatry of talk therapy. So I use my intuition and from my own experience, as well as the process of astrology, to determine what it is that this person is about, and how I feel from my own intuition, not just from the process of astrology, how I feel that they will be better off, and then I use the zodiac to explain where they've come from and where they would be better expressing themselves.
And you have a thorough understanding of the archetypes of the astrological symbols. And before you continue, Nemus, I'd just like you to know we have some technical issues. Can I get you to just back off from your microphone? It's a little loud, and I think we're getting some distortion. So yeah.
Okay.
And my mic is always low, so I turn mine down, and and when I do that, then nobody will be able to hear me. So maybe we'll balance each other out. That's much better. Thank you.
Is that okay? Can you hear me? Is that
perfect?
Okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, right. I've got a really loud voice.
I thought it sounded fine because I'm actually listening on air, but other people around the world are experiencing a different experience. So just want to make sure everybody's enjoying the wonderful conversation.
That's fine. Yeah. I think it's my first house moon that's just shouting out to the world, "Here I am," nice and loud. And so
no, you're very clear and very concise. Although your understanding of these very complex systems is vast, and it's just amazing. So, and I think that's why you're able to just pinpoint on individual natal charts when you're working with people, is that you have this innate knowledge of all aspects of each sign and where they fall in the zodiac. And when somebody says something, you can kind of just, oh yeah, that makes sense, or yeah, that's coming from over here.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the person's experience. The main thing that made me put the idea of my version of astropsychology into context was from an experiment that Jung performed, and he wanted to see if a composite chart, which is two charts of two different people combined to a midpoint method. He wanted to see if there was an aspect on that chart that would definitely say, right, this is where these two people would definitely meet. And in the case of the two individuals who were married, he wanted to see if there was one aspect in particular that would say this is definitely the planet or aspect where these two people would be married. And 7 different astrologers performed the reading on this one chart, the same chart. And although there was logic and reasoning behind every single observation and interpretation, each astrologer did give an interpretation as to where these two people would have been married and where they would have met. However, they were all different aspects. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that being was that it all comes from the experience of the observer. And again, this is one of the great things about astrology and astropsychology, that it's one way in which we all connect and share experiences with each other, and we get different perspectives depending on the person that's reading the chart. So that in itself is emphasizing that individuality is something to be shared and something to be expressed. We want to hear what other people think of us, and not for the pursuit of perfection, but to share opinions and come to the point of agree to disagree and build our base of knowledge and
get a
just
broader perspective.
Yeah, but more of a horizon, more of a panorama of reality. And that's done through not only being important yourself and generating your will and being egocentric, but also giving a gift to people and passing on a legacy and sharing yourself with people, which again is a reflection of what I like to think that I'm doing, whereby I could quite easily keep all this knowledge to myself, but I don't. I like to put it out there, and I like to build this art and to get people to enjoy it as well. And that's another part of philosophy, that if you're not enjoying life, if you're not embracing your fate, then that's something that should be encouraged. We should be lovers of one's fate, and embrace that things go up and things go down. That sometimes we'll be happy and sometimes we'll be sad, and it's all unpredictable. And sometimes some people can get so locked in a routine that's safe for them that they forget how to enjoy life. They're more focused on how to be safe and secure and do what everybody else wants, which straight off is a loss of individuality in itself. So it's about finding that part within us that we've forgotten. Because the one thing I've noticed with myself and with everyone who I do a reading for, it's kind of like, I'm remembering who I am. Just from this reading, they've remembered so much about what they, what's been put aside in order to devote themselves to life's tests. So one such aspect that will relate to that will be Saturn and Capricorn, which is very much about limitation and boundary. And the Saturn return is a very important and profound time for an individual, because it's a time where we look at our reality and start to question whether we're doing what we want to do or whether we're just doing what others want to do, to have an illusion of happiness. And that if we don't get up and do things for ourselves and take responsibility for our lives and what we're doing with our lives, then if we don't do it now, then we're never going to do it. So it's the breaking of boundaries with the Saturn return, and with some people it can be quite a lot to deal with. It can, if they're not very open and are not quite ready to receive information from others, and who like to have a carefully structured lifestyle, which again is very Saturnalian dignity structure, because Saturn represents the bones and skin and holds dominion over the inner planets, based on the observation that Saturn is the furthest of the planets that we can see with the naked eye. So it holds dominion, it rules, it's the Lord of the Rings. And it's about the structure and the fundamental parts of ourselves. So the Saturn return is a time for rebuilding and doing things again, and remembering things that we've forgotten from a childhood, from the Saturn opposition, which is around the age of 14 or 15, and then the Saturn return, which is around the age of 29 and 30. So you've got these massive changes that come about during those two periods in our lives. And this, what I'm explaining, that Saturn holds these dignities, it's not so much that Saturn produces those results. We should look at astrology as a kind of a watch that with each turn of the watch on the giant scale clock, with each turn comes a new relative outcome. So we relate Saturn to this massive change in our structure and the way that we perceive reality, based on that does actually happen as an eventuality around the age of 30, that we start to question what we're doing with ourselves, and then start to decide on future planning and leaving things behind. So based on that, Saturn is a really long transit. It takes about 29 years to return to its point when you were born. We then take the archetype of Saturn as the relative planet for that experience, and carrying on with the different relative archetypes, there is an asteroid Chiron, which came into our consciousness in the 70s, thereabouts, and it is very relative to the practice of psychiatry. That was when psychiatry started to be what it is that we know it as today. And it represents suffering. It's the wounded healing. And based on the metaphysics of it, that Chiron weaves in and out of Saturn's orbit, because Saturn represents the structure and the skin, Chiron represents the parts of ourselves that we have difficulty facing and bringing to the surface. So Chiron is there representing the process for becoming an individual, that we must face aspects of ourselves that are otherwise difficult, things that we don't like bringing to the surface. And Chiron, whenever I've looked at it in natal charts, it usually has a very interesting perspective on what's holding the individual back, and it's a good angle to look from, most definitely. So that the main things that I look at in the chart, of course, like in normal astrology, the ascendant is always the most important, because that's where the self first manifests as the ego through the houses. So the whole of the pattern of the chart should always be related to that first house. Then I obviously focus on Chiron, because that will explain the suffering and the challenge to the individual, the constant challenge, and an inherent crisis. And of course, Saturn and the Saturn return, a pre-Saturn return chart and a post-Saturn return chart, and with the life experience that the individual gives me, will always be consistent that the pre-Saturn return charts are potential to be an individual, whereas the post-Saturn return charts are expressions of the individual, but not quite at its utmost performance, if you will, if not the expression that the individual would like. So I always look at Chiron, and in particular, I also use the moon's north and south node as a good indicator of where we're heading. The reason being is because astrology is a measure of the movement of the sun through the ecliptic and the zodiac, and the original way of measuring astrology was always referred to in the northern hemisphere. So the measurements of the movement of the sun as it goes through the ecliptic and how it relates to down on Earth, we always look at the north being the higher mind. So we always look at Cancer on mid-June, on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, and that December the 21st or 22nd will be the winter in the northern hemisphere. So it's read from a northern perspective. And the natal chart, when it's generated, we have 4 different points of the cross of matter. The cross is representative of how things materialize into reality. And we have the ascendant, which is the rising sign, which is the exact sign and aspect into the first house that is relative to the very minute that you were born, and of course your location. And then there is the imperfection, which is the bottom of the sky, the descendant, which is the other horizon where we fall, and the midheaven, or the MC, the medium-collie, is the midheavens of how we look out over the horizon. So the midheaven, when we look out over the horizon from a central point, is actually the southern sky. So you can look at the natal chart as the ascendant being the east, and then the midheaven is the southern sky, and the descendant is the west, and the Imuncoli is below us. But in fact, the whole chart is a northern perspective, because you as a central point, if you're looking out over the horizon and the chart isn't actually looking behind you, it's looking out, and it's from a multi-direction and a simultaneous process, what you're actually seeing is you as a central point on a northern point. So if you stood on the North Pole, smack bang on the point that we call north on the Earth, no matter which way you looked out over the horizon, you could do a 360-degree circle and you will always be looking due south. So your true expression is that of the north. So based on the north being so important, the north node of the moon, which is the imaginary point that we measure between where the moon's orbit crosses over the ecliptic, and there's two hemispheres to the ecliptic just like on Earth. So the northern hemisphere of the ecliptic and the southern hemisphere of the ecliptic, where the moon crosses over those 2 points over the ecliptic, we generate the north and south node that are in opposition to each other. And the north node of the moon, and the moon in particular being this reflected inner world, being able to understand the inner world is the best way to project our true selves into reality. So the moon holds much significance with the north node, which will show us where we should be heading to express ourselves in our true form in the now. And the moon is, as we know, the ruler of Cancer, which is a very watery sign. And water has a common theme with astropsychology and astrology in particular, because the first house, which follows the 12th house, Pisces and Aries, Pisces being this water sign, the idea is that the exalting sun in the fire sign Aries comes out of the water of Pisces. So it's based on the observation that when we look out over the horizon of the sea, we can see the sun rising up out of the water. And if we observe the sun rising above the sea, we can see that the sun projects its light, it externalizes what it is. And if we look down into the water, we can see its reflection. And that is symbolic of the two-way process of projection and reflection from the self to the ego and the ego to the self. And the moon is in Cancer, which is regarded as a very ethereal water sign, hot water, and Pisces is the water sign that is allowing the self, the sun, and to project into the ego. And then when we go to Scorpio, which is another water sign, which again ties in with that when the sun falls past the horizon at sunset, it falls into the water again. And then when we get to Capricorn, which is in the middle of winter, this represents cold and frozen and inertia, freezing, which again ties in with the boundaries and limitations that I was talking about with Saturn and Capricorn earlier. And then the process continues to Aquarius, the water bearer, which then brings the water sign Pisces, which then allows the self and the ego to be expressed through the fire in the first house of Aries. So we can look at it as a kind of thermodynamic pump whereby it's frozen in Capricorn and then it warms up all the way to boiling point in Cancer. and then freezes again in Capricorn. So that being the externalization from reflection and projection, we can look at Cancer and Capricorn. The houses, as I'll go into a moment, are a good indicator as well as to finding a pattern. But Cancer and Capricorn represent, or Cancer is our roots, because it's the fourth house, it's the Imuncoli, it's the bottom of us, it's where we come from, the house we call home. So it represents the mother and the father. So it's about the building up of our inner world and inner security and self-acceptance. And then right across over the horizon we have Capricorn, which is where we join the social circle, the external world, because Saturn represents the external world and the skin and structure again. So the analogy is that we either accept ourselves and free flow and continue this process to be, or we freeze solid in the idea of Capricorn by giving in to what everyone expects from us. But in all reality, we don't need, in all truth and honesty, we don't actually need the approval of other people to be who we are. We just need to be who we are and accept ourselves, and that will allow us to continue to keep rising out of the water, so to speak, in Pisces through that first house, which is our identity. So the first house, again, is how we project ourselves from that reflection. So again, it's got perfect symmetry to how we have to constantly reassess ourselves and through looking in at ourselves and not giving into conditions of others and living in the external world is the only truth. That the only thing of substance, of real objective value, is within us, and being able to externalize what we truly are is the only way that we can truly shine. So I always look for where the North Node is to be able to describe that polarity, and Chiron usually leads from that, and of course Saturn indicates much more. So again, it's very much focused on self-responsibility, which is a form of self-acceptance, acceptance and responsibility of who we are, and our duty and service to the world to generate who we are, project who we are, then change who we are, based purely on our own self-assessments and not to the needs and expectations of others. So the houses on their own can tell the entire story of the individual. You know, we don't have to just observe the planets and the hard and soft aspects like the sextile, trine, square and opposition, although they are pretty good indicators as to what's going on. The houses on themselves can describe quite a lot about that person. And one more thing that I've brought into astropsychology that I didn't really have that much information on, but I've got some stuff for it now, which is the idea of the different sizes of the houses, because the signs, they're always 30 degrees. However, depending on your position on the globe and what time of year we're talking, the houses will be of different sizes. Like some houses will contain only one sign and be really small, whereas some will be really wide and have 3 signs in them. And this is known as intersection. So if there is a really small house and it's occupied entirely by one sign, then that is known as an intersected house. If there are 3 signs within one house, that is known as an intersected sign. Now what these represent are that when something is concentrated and the house is really small, that means that the dignities of that sign within that house, whether it's got any planets or not, will be generated very well, will have been really well developed and naturally very powerful and strong and direct. So they're a kind of power that we have, and being aware of these powers, and what I've seen from people who have these intersected signs and houses, they can either be a blessing or they can be something really difficult.
Okay, Nemus, before you go on, I'd just like to ask a question.
Sure.
I kind of dabble in astrology, and I would say dabble lightly. When I did my own chart, I noticed that it kind of had the appearance of all the signs being on one side of the chart more, and then not maybe one was outside of it, but just above. But it was kind of like the whole half of the chart, all my signs were on the one half. And I just wanted to let you know too that in about 9 minutes we're going to take a break, and we'll come back. But go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. What do you mean all the signs?
Well, when I plotted the chart and I put all the houses, all the planets on the chart, all the planets fell on say the left side of the chart, from Cancer, Capricorn to the left. And
right. Okay. So and we're using a Placidus chart, the normal chart.
Yeah, I was just dabbling, and I'm just wondering what's the significance of how they fall in the chart, and besides where they fall. Okay.
If it is that you've got planets on one half of the chart to the other, one of the best ways of looking at it is that houses 1 through 6 are objective, and the houses 7 through 12 are subjective. So we can look at which side the planets are, and if they appear to be on one side, then they are looking out or looking in. So they're either looking out subjectively or they're looking in objectively, depending on which side they're looking at. So you can either that could be like an extrovert kind of nature or an introvert kind of nature.
More of an introvert, absolutely. Yeah. With an extrovert, super ego.
Yeah, very well guided, then I take it.
Well, I hope so. We're becoming more so as I learn these processes and I understand the concepts that help to balance all these parts of myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no one's perfect, and the other thing that I try to put emphasis on is that you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. That's one thing that can really hold us back. That we really want to understand ourselves, and we really want to interact with people and be friendly and empathetic. And sometimes we just clash with the world, and there's not a lot that we can do about it. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up over it. And we should just accept that this is just another experience. Things aren't always good and bad and right and wrong. It's just something to be acknowledged. So that's another key objective of mine that I put forward. And taking that pressure off someone usually makes them express themselves even better than before. I think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I know that I do. I mean, I'm constantly working and writing, and if I don't feel I've got enough done, I really kind of beat myself up and try and catch up with myself, and then just burn myself out. So there's a lot of time to sort things out. What goes around comes around, and just being aware of who we are is important, and that there is time to change. Which is there's always time to do that, and we should always just look at the chart not necessarily as are we doing things right and wrong. It's whether we're doing it well or poorly. So that's another good perspective that I go into, whether these energies are being applied well and usefully, or poorly and malefically. So detachment from values is very important, without a doubt, and looking at the chart from a neutral perspective, which again I was explaining, one of the best ways to learn astrology is to do other people's charts, because you won't be as attached to you won't have their emotions, and you'll be able to see things about them that they can't see, and obviously from there they gain more insight from that. So it is always the best practice to do that. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I like the fact that you're looking from a cognitive behavioral perspective. And
Yeah,
that's always intrigued me. That's always been a point of like, why isn't there more of that? Where they're always trying to do the behavioral, and the cognitive is so important.
Definitely, yeah. The idea is that we externalise what it is that we like, that's the most operational, and one of the most helpful things that someone told me once was that we're not responsible for what we think, but we are responsible for what we do. So understanding that we really have no control over what it is that we're thinking, and that there's a sea of information in there, but recognising that we should think before we act, and through that. Turning in your external projection into yourself, and thinking before you act, and slowing down and bringing things to a rest is the only way to allow the motion within us to bring about the change that we can then externalise. So yeah, it's very much mindfulness. Meditation in a way, because while you're doing the chart, you're completely still and you are looking in all the time while you're reading the chart. So you have ceased external activity completely and you're looking in. And astropsychology is a great way of putting everything in order and not letting your mind wander. It's a preset to put your thoughts into, and it evokes the right thoughts and the right way of looking at yourself. The most practical ways of looking at yourself. And through that, through understanding a bit more about yourself and putting things in order and having this visual picture of what your mind looks like in a way, can really help you externalize the right, but the parts of you that are more desirable to yourself, things that are more self-worth to you.
Interesting. Well, with that, I guess we'll take our little break, and we'll be back with Nemiel, Nemus, Amaranthi. Please stay tuned.
Your hand in mine, we walk the miles. Thanks to you, it will be done.
Okay.
And welcome back. This is Chrissy McMahon, and we are speaking with. Hold on, let's turn the music off. And we are speaking with Nemus, who is Nemiel, Nemus Amaranthi, and he is the originator, a profiler, astropsychological profiler, and owner of astropsychology.co.uk, a website that is dedicated to astropsychology. Welcome back, Nemus. How are you? Here in hour two. Yeah, we just had amazing. It's amazing information. Your information is just amazing.
Just keep going. Yeah, I mean, I just started making videos in January, and I just haven't stopped. I think I've just gone past the 125 mark now, and the videos are in between half an hour to 2 hours each. So I'm used to talking on end and end and end. This is the first interview that I've done though, but seems to be going okay. So, is there anything you'd like me to cover or?
Sure. I was curious as to your interpretation of the history of astrology, and like how did this all get started, and you know
Oh
what
right,
part
yeah,
it
yeah.
played in not just the astrotheological aspects of it, but just astrology in general,
Yeah.
and then how you wove it into psychology. It's really fascinating.
Okay. Well, the ancients would use the path of the sun as an indicator of the different times of the year, the changes of the seasons, and day to day there would be a full 360-degree rotation. And they noticed that the sun would rise and it would set at 12 different points in the sky all throughout the year. And from this transition, and based on a 360-degree circle, they took this number of 12 throughout the year and split that down throughout the day. So we had 6 different positions, 12 different positions on a 360-degree circle, making 12 30-degree sections. And each one of these sections has a relative eventuality, depending on the time of the year and the time of the day. The degrees between 0 to 180 at the first half would always be the process of sunrise to sunset, and would be the process of spring through to summer. And the bottom half would obviously be sunset to sunrise and autumn to winter. And at the point of equilibrium, where the winter would end, and when the winter ends, that's when the ancients, the developers of how we perceive astrology, they would see the beginning of spring as the generation, the beginning of things again. So it was the point where the sun returned back in spring on March the 21st, the spring equinox, where they will class that as the start of the solar year. And from that point of beginning in equilibrium, when they looked out into the heavens, they had these 12 30-degree sections that they'd measured, and it just so happened that there were constellations within them, and those constellations bore the names of these sections as we know them today. But obviously, some of those stars, they're not there anymore, or they've moved, and they continue to move through the entire year. So we can't really say that the stars have any influence. It just so happened that the constellations fitted within those sections at that particular time of year along the ecliptic, but they bore their name, and this produced the signs, and it produced the houses as we know them today. And the houses are the unchangeable positions down here on Earth, the angle of influence from the sun as the basis of astrology as we know it, in the geocentric form, the relation of the ecliptic to the equator. And those houses would bear the same dignities as the signs that would be in them. So the signs continue to move around, but the houses stay where they are. So any sign, any given sign, can occupy any given house, but the houses are another expression of those signs in the zodiac. And that's where I relate the zodiac as the self, and the houses as the ego, because the self is the potential. It's a part of the galactic pole, and the depending on which sign is in whatever house, will determine how that house has been expressed. So in particular with the ascendant, one thing that I've come to realise is that it's not usually that good of an approach to just go by what sun sign the individual is. The more appropriate way of reading the chart and to look into the true expression of the individual, how they are being externalized, is purely from the sign on the ascendant. So the sun sign should be the final summing up of the person, but not the overall, the initial way of looking for the pattern in the chart. The ascendant is probably got much more to do with the way that we express ourselves than any other aspect of the chart that determines who we are and how we appear to the world. So, based on this idea of measuring time and relative eventuality, just like a clock or calendar, you'd probably think that, well, we can measure the changes of the seasons that way. But we are talking about mapping out the mind. We're talking about understanding an individual. And the process of astrology, when we look at it as a clock or a calendar, doesn't seem to fit well when we're trying to talk about a simultaneous action, in a random, chaotic stimulation of any given house at any given time. So that's why, I started I looked at what astrology was in itself, and through astrotheology and just understanding the general process of astrology, that there isn't any real one point where anything begins. It's all there as a perfect whole and preconceived and has no beginning and no end. And because of this, the self and the zodiac being the potential, and with each change of the sign to each house, like a kaleidoscope, we get a different pattern and expression. That was where I came up with the idea that the zodiac is the self and the houses are the ego, and the generation of any type of behaviour, as we were discussing before the break, where everything comes from a cognitive function of taking things in and then bringing them out to our behaviour, sort of stems from. So it's to look at the zodiac, the signs on the outside of the chart as the potential of the dignities, and then the houses are the verb for those dignities. They are the doing, the action of those potential dignities. And then, of course, the planets based on how far away they are from the sun, and their orbit times, and when they're most visible, or there are many different considerations as to why we relate each aspect to another. How close they are to the sun or how far away they are will determine further expressions of how the potential from the zodiac, which sends those angular rays from the planets and heavenly bodies into the equator, the point of equilibrium, which again was where the ancients took the start of the solar year at this point of equilibrium, where we go from the generation and operation of spring and summer to the preservation and destruction and dissolution of the autumn and the winter. So the point of equilibrium is what is sought after. It's where everything begins, but it's not so much a beginning, it's something that is already pre-planned. It's just that it's finally projecting itself as one whole. So yeah, it's mostly just like a way of mapping out the mind, and the necessity of equilibrium based on the astrology as a system of polarities, of opposites and likes attracting. We get the equilibrium, and we also get instability. And without the instability and the desire to seek equilibrium, nothing could be. We must feel pain in order to know if we are healthy or not. We must be able to feel unrest and feel upset and disturbed by things, or in order to know if we're in danger, or if we need to change where we are, and if we're putting ourselves in oppressive situations. So our emotions need to be chaotic and unordered, and the system of astrology shows polar opposites working together in perfect harmony, with the idea of going from stability, where everything can begin, to unrest and instability, with the objective of finding equilibrium again. So instability and sadness and depression, from my personal experience, are what has made me what I am today. Without the negative experiences, I wouldn't be, I'd say, wouldn't be as wise as I am today. I'd still probably be quite naive and silly in my choices in life. I should know. I mean, I used to be a heroin addict a couple of years ago, and if there was ever a point of unrest and instability, that would be it. But it's a blessing in disguise, because on reflection of that experience, I saw that, it doesn't matter what situation I am in, I am still me, and I will devote myself to something, whether it's good or bad. So the way things manifest based on whether we're doing things right or wrong is kind of an illusion. We're still just the one person. And sorry, there's words.
Yeah, I know there's some construction. I know you're right there in the city of London, so.
Well, yeah, they would start now. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Did you want to move to another area? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I will do. Yeah, they would start now, wouldn't they?
That's fine. It's
this is a moment.
Yeah, it's just a distraction. What you're saying is so important, and you're speaking on the duality and the importance of having the two aspects of light and dark, the good and evil, whatever you want to call it. Not to be judgmental, but it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, one of the best realizations is that duality is an illusion. That love and hate are the same thing, and to surrender, to give in to one value or the other, is to not allow things to be, to not accept things, or to try and understand them. It's plain ignorance and not wanting to embrace your fate. So you can apply yourself the same way in any given situation, and the way that I interpret that into astropsychology is the ascendant through to the descendant, where we will rise and we will fall. So it works perfectly with polar opposites. There's always two ways to look at things, to perceive things, but there's only one action, that we can perform, and that's based on our choices and the way that we perceive our reality. So duality being an illusion, that good and bad are the same thing, right and wrong don't necessarily exist, that we've constructed right and wrong. We in our reality have created our spiritual reality. It's all come from within. And we pick and choose what we allow into our philosophies, and society as a whole is being constructed subjectively, and everything is experienced subjectively. So we sort of point to objective truth, but we can never really show the truth. But we can become an expression of it, and that again comes from reflection and through practices such as meditation and natal chart reading, whereby we're able to examine and stop and take a good look at things and then externalize the most workable operation for ourselves. So and astrology definitely did that for me. Without astrology, I just don't think I'd be away from the life that I used to lead. And again, it doesn't matter what I was applying myself into. I was devoting myself to it. I'm the sort of person who will throw themselves into anything that's put before them, whether it's good or bad. But I realised it was my responsibility to put myself in situations that were productive, where I could give to people. And this brings us on to the Leo and Aquarius polarity, which is very relative to us all at the current time of being in the age of Aquarius, as it's been assumed, whereby the fifth house being the house of creativity and the house of will, it's where the sun rules, and the sun being the most important influence to life down on Earth and life within the universe. The idea is that we must carry on, and we must become important, and to express ourselves in the best way, and to soldier on and keep doing that and impose our will. However, we can become incredibly egocentric and stick within situations that don't really contribute much to anyone else apart from ourselves, and we can become quite selfish. So in order to balance that out, we must give, and we must pass on legacy, and that's what Aquarius is all about. It's not about dividing and conquering anymore. It's about sharing what information we've got, and knowledge being the key to power. So having that ability to share is very important for me. And when I looked at my chart, funnily enough, the second house, which I class as the house of self-worth, because when we know what we are, we know what our values are. And the second house is intercepted, and Leo occupies the entire house. And of course, right across, I've got 8th house interception with Aquarius. So that energy of being creative as a very important self-value, and being able to give and pass on ideas to others through creativity is very well developed for me, but however, on the flip side, because we're putting across that duality is an illusion, on the flip side, where I was applying that before was more that my energies of creativity were being applied into a life that involved crime and self-destruction, and of course the sun, the ruler of Leo, would be the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. So those energies of Leo in that second house, my values were being put into the wrong things for me, with crime and heroin and just general destructive behaviour for myself and of others. And obviously that would make me quite selfish. So that, again, that second house would be very well developed to cause chaos for myself and others. So it really is all about where you put yourself in reality, and the way that you construct your reality, and that you are ultimately responsible for everything that happens in your reality. And before the break, I was going into interceptions, and I've just explained there my intercepted houses. But the intercepted sign, intercepted signs are when we have an entire 30 degrees of the sign within a house, and there are two signs on the start of the cusp of that house and at the end of that house into the next one. So there's always three signs in an intersected sign in a house that's really wide. And the intersections for me are it was Taurus in the 11th and Scorpio in the 5th. So we've got this brilliant symmetry in my chart in particular, whereby we've got the 2nd and 8th house, which is essentially Taurus and Scorpio being occupied by Leo and Aquarius, and then we've got the 5th house and the 11th house, which is essentially Leo and Aquarius, occupied by Taurus and Scorpio. And the 2nd house in Taurus is all about our self-worth and our values. It's the first materialization. It's putting the first idea into motion from Aries, from that first house. So we get our values and morals. And right across from it, we've got this Scorpio, which is all about desires and the things that we want and the material reality. It's where we fall. And these are intersected signs in my chart. So these aren't really that visible. And one thing that I can recall is that there was a time where I didn't really know what I wanted. And there was a time that, you know, I didn't really think for myself, which also reflects Uranus being occupied in the 5th in Scorpio for me too, which is all about intuition and independence. And I just didn't have that. You know, I was very reliant on other people, but also used to take advantage of them. But right across in the 11th house was intersected Taurus. And of course, my self-worth was actually, you know, I didn't really think much of myself. You know, I wasn't very confident. I'm not the loud video sharing philosopher, transvestite philosopher that you see today. You know, it took me quite a while to let go of things, which, you know, and realise there was nothing to be afraid of, and, you know, I was making things more difficult for myself. So these things needed encouraging in me, and they were encouraged by me becoming creative. And eventually, when I started to interact with people who were much more my kind of people, you know, nice people, sharing people, that evoked that side of me, the hidden need and powers of me, which is to know what it is that I want to do and get some, you know, get my self-respect and some self-esteem back in order to be creative, which would give me my independence and bring forth this intuition that I'm able to share with the world. So those intersections right there have just told a whole massive aspect of my life, like pre-Saturn return, which again, you know, if I'd have read the chart before, it would have all been potential for that change. But obviously, on reflection now, as I've looked at it now, I can fit that experience into those houses and those sites. And it all came down to just letting go and surrender and just allowing myself to be and not hesitating. And that was what I wanted. I wanted to be able to just do what I wanted to do for a change, you know, because the constant going to work for someone 9 till 5, and eventually that got me so depressed and upset that, you know, I ended up using drugs because I was so bored. You know, that was just keeping me in the same place. But eventually, when I got a bit more independence about me and I started to spend a lot more time by myself and then started sharing videos, that was when me being the Cancer, you know, the crab in its shell, stopped holding on with the claws and let go, you know, and allowed the waters to flow freely from the first house. And my first house is occupied by Cancer, and I'm a Cancer moon, a Cancer sun, and Cancer north node, and the north node is direct, so I am incredibly watery. incredibly Cancerian. So in my case, the sun sign does actually describe me quite well. However, what I've just presented for you there is a way of that we'll look at the rest of the chart first to see if everything fits for the pattern, and then the sun sign is really the last sign. So I just thought that, you know, from that process of understanding that equilibrium to instability and back again, and where all this the art of astrology comes from, that's been passed down to us from the ancients just by studying angular movements of the sky, that from the system of psychology that we have today, in particular from Jungian psychology, who incorporated mysticism. Jung noticed that, you know, let's face it, psychology is not so much a pseudoscience, but it's all assumption. Nobody actually knows. There is no solid fact. It's all interpretation. It's all based on the observer's intuition from their experiences. But Jung managed to create a data set that people could work on. So again, it's just the process that exists, really. It's just, you know, such as the personality types that he came up with, that there was 8 different types, and introvert and extrovert, and then redefined what the ego and the self meant, and the ID, and, you know, and it was from observing that I noticed that it's all more or less the same thing, because astrology essentially talks about the organism of nature and how it manifests into materialization, but still has this two-way communication with itself. And from consciousness, we get the expression of the ego, which is I. And of course, we can label each sign of the zodiac with a different ego expression. Such as Aries in the first house is I am, that I am. So straight away you appear, and it's the first contact between the self and the ego as it manifests into reality over the horizon on the ascendant. And it just is, and it says I am. Then we move into the self-worth of Taurus, which is I have, and so on, and we can go on with these different expressions of I. And that's how, you know, I related it to psychology, based purely on the fact that it's measuring consciousness, and
Right.
that's exactly what psychology is about, really. So the very, you know, modern day psychology is basically astrology to a very high degree.
And I think your beautiful explanation and self-disclosure kind of just, you know, shows the symmetry of your astropsychology program, and how it does just fit naturally together. And if people were more open to using these ancient processes, these, you know, these are just wonderful. And it's fascinating because everything I'm thinking, you're just saying it. But I wanted to maybe go back a little bit on the cusps. I know that I'm a Capricorn 4-degree Sagittarius. So maybe you could explain what the significance is of having somebody who falls on. I thought usually it's like about 2 degrees is the importance. Is there any importance in a 4-degree cusp?
Which house are we talking? Which
Well,
house?
I'm not
is
sure of the houses, but I guess if Capricorn is my house, my you know, my rising sign.
Is it the ascendant? Oh, that's the ascendant. I don't necessarily put much emphasis on the deacons and the different degrees on the chart. It's not something I've really explored or seen much significance. But what I will say is that what you see on the whole is what you see on the parts. So when we have the process of, say, well, Capricorn is a cardinal sign, Aquarius is a fixed sign, and then Pisces is a mutable sign. If you break down into the sign of Capricorn, we get 30 degrees. We divide that by 3, and we get 3 10-degree sections. And so we could say the first decanet is again a cardinal form of the cardinal Capricorn, a fixed form of the cardinal Capricorn, and a mutable form of the cardinal Capricorn. So if you're within the first 4 degrees, it would be very much the general idea of Capricorn, which is one analogy will be the goat at the bottom of a mountain that has to get to the top, and as it gets higher and higher up, it starts off very weak and frail, but as it goes further up, it builds up its strength and becomes very practical. And the expression of the ego for Capricorn is I use. So it's about being practical in the external world.
That explains me to a T. Oh my God, that is so perfect. Because I really don't want to even buy anything like new. I'd rather have something used, or something borrowed, or whatever. If I have it and I can use it, I'll use it. If I don't have it, I'll do without. It's like crazy, and like the older I get, the more I'm into that. So funny. It's just it's so relevant, and our lives are so parallel. I also had an addiction problem, and I'll be coming up on 23 years next January. So I'm very excited about and my life has been a climb, and I have gotten stronger, and a lot of things that I've been through have made me a better person. So I totally relate to all the beautiful things that you're saying. It's just amazing. It's just wonderful.
Well, this is part of the pleasure that I don't come in from the angle of flattery. I just go in from what that sign represents, the metaphor of it, and you could say that any one of those signs or dignities could relate to anyone. However, that's the whole point of it, that everything that's in there has been generated from us, and we've described the heavens haven't described us, so of course everything in there will relate to everyone because we've applied the philosophy within those houses, and that's the general data set and process for all of astrology, that it's not just that I get these books and I get information from Google or from other people, and then that's it. If I've got several descriptions of a sign, then I don't just stop there and say, right, that's it. There are an infinite number of perspectives, the same way that there are infinite number of ways of being that we can be, and an infinite amount of possibilities out there on the whole. So it's an emerging art.
Okay, Nemus, you're starting to break up. I'm not sure if it's our Skype connection. Okay, you sound good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that should evolve. It's not something that has an objective, which I think the main problem with adults in society is that we get conditioned that playtime's over, and we've got an objective to do. We've got to set out and do a job and finish it, or the final conditioning from the school is that we pass the test, they tick the box, we pass or we fail. So it's very much start line and finish line, and the idea of self-expression and becoming at one with the creative collective is to appreciate that there is no start or end. There's just what is here right in front of you, to be practical. I mean, my girlfriend mentioned something quite funny the other day, that what we should do is put an advert in the local newspaper and invite lots of adults and bankers and executives to a community hall in the local area and just say, right, what shall we play? you know.
Yeah.
Just get like toys out, and you know, they wouldn't know what to do because, you know, adults have got this, you know, everyone who's devoted to a career in our society, or, you know, you know, just your average Joe Blow on the street, you know, will have this start and finish objective, and you know, people will be like, well, I don't know, you know, what's the point? You know, people don't see the relevance in just existing. They don't see the relevance of philosophy. And one of the main things that I started to look at when I started making the videos back in January was how philosophy can be applied in experience, how it could be in practicality, because I want something of aesthetic value. I want something of substance, something real. And what I had around me wasn't real. It was you know, it was either a cheap thrill or it was something that somebody else wanted, and it meant nothing to me, because I thought, well, if I die tomorrow, what did any of this mean? And I didn't ask for any of this. So you know, looking on the inner world, you know, I wanted something of real substance, and it's that being able to express yourself and embracing life, the ups and downs of life, is an art in itself. You know, that is the only thing that is aesthetic value of affirming life, as opposed to denying it and stopping yourself from doing things, or more relevantly, allowing others to stop you from doing things, because it all comes down to your self-responsibility, as always. You know, so I want to be able to not just look at these books and gather information about astrology and just see it as something on paper. I want to be the philosophies. I want to work them out. I want to test them to destruction to see if they work. You know, there's loads of different views and ideas out there that are great, and, you know, but they need to evolve, and they have to be tested. They have to be lived, because, you know, when you look at the word experiment, it's two words: experience of the mind. You know, the Latin word ment. So, you know, in order to you know, our experience, you know, should be combined with our intuition, and from that we get our reason, and we get our logic, and of course our values. And it's not the answer that is important. It's not what we produce that is important. It's the process of doing so. And that involves that, you know, whatever answer we come up with might not necessarily make things better for us. You know, our philosophy may be malefic or it may be benefic, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that you've lived, you've experienced with your mind, you've allowed something to be. That's affirming life. That's embracing your faith. You know, Nietzsche would call this his formula for the affirmation of life, which is amor fati, which means love of one's fate and destiny, and that's pretty much what I focus on. The thing in itself isn't really that important. It's the process that is the most relative to us, and of course this is the existential side of what I apply into astropsychology. The biggest question of all: what am I doing here? You know, and that can be something that we can be distracted from, because we are always in service to others rather than being in service to something that is of real substance to us. And this, of course, is reflective of the 6th house in Virgo, which is a very discriminate house. It's all about analysis. I analyse. And it's also the house of service, and this can either be service to God and to one's faith, and to live truly with the objective whole of the 5 houses before it into subjective reality, or we can surrender our free will to others to have a false sense of balance as we fall back into the waters of material reality and become restricted by the boundaries in Capricorn. But right across from it, we get Pisces in the 12th, which is boundless, it's limitless. It's occupied by Neptune, which is the escapist and the artist. So this really grounded way of relating to people with Venus through Virgo is this discriminate kind of relationship. And right across, we've got two houses and signs that are so mutable, they aren't actually even anything alike like the other signs are, because Virgo is so discriminate, and Pisces is all about faith, a leap of faith and surrender and allowing things to be, because it is a course out of that 12th house that things are generated in the house that follows it. That through belief we can allow things to be, and it's through belief. I mean, most people say, oh well, we've got this knowledge, we've got science, and we've got facts, whatever they are. But if I put it to you this way, that say I've got a headache. And I want to get rid of the headache. Now, it's generally understood that paracetamol would be a good painkiller for the headache. However, I say I don't believe that will cure my headache. Now, we all know that paracetamol will cure the headache, but if I say I don't believe, I'm not likely to do it, am I? So
Right.
if I don't do it, then it's not going to work. So there's believing in something and blindly and saying it's something that you know, and then there's the pure fact that there are things that are there that may work. However, without the belief, without that leap of faith of doing it, and I've just described something that we all know will work, but if I say I don't believe, then that means I'm not likely to do it, But if we go into something a bit more uncertain, like let's say if I've got a tumour that I need to have removed from my body, and we've got a very risky operation ahead, and I have doubts as to whether that's going to work, I'm probably not going to have the operation done. Now, there is a 50-50 chance of whether I could survive after the surgery, or whether it could damage me or bring me to my death. But without the belief, we couldn't allow that to be. So it can't be something that's contemplated because it's never happened. So in our lives, there are many things that we put too much doubt on, and right across the way, Virgo can be so over-analytical and hesitant that we can think that we're finding stability by avoiding life and denying it. But in actual fact, we're not we're not experiencing the world through fear of the unpredictable. So that's another thing that I try and look for in most people. I mean, the majority of my clients that come to me are generally very open people and very accepting. However, there are some that are very, very much indoctrinated from values from the parents and from schools or from whatever other external influence that they have. And this keeps them in this state of being very hesitant and over-analytical. And I've found that, the majority of these type of people who are like that actually have the north node of the moon, the north being the true expression of the higher mind or the self in astropsychological terms. They normally have the north node in Pisces, which means that their true expression is one where they need to just give in and have a leap of faith. And then they will experience the world much more and actually live. So again, that's also works with the basis that I wanted the best of both worlds of like the Vedic spiritual practical philosophy for the inner world, but also using the Western system in order to measure that, but without concentrating too much on the external world, but also allowing those Westerners to carry on living the way that we have if we choose to, but not denying life in the hope that someone's going to come and do things for us, or there's going to be something in the next life that's better for us if we behave well in this life according to somebody else. But most things, everything has to be experienced, and everyone should, people should look at anything that happens to them in life, not as good or bad. They need to treat everything as an experience and use their intuition to reflect on it. And it's through understanding everything, that, having the eyes to see what's going on around you and being more self-aware are the building blocks. It's the structure, and again, Saturn is not only on the outside world with the deception that everything influences from the outside in, but it's also the structure and the fundamentals that holds dominion over us all that we need to rebuild from the inside out, and see that rather than balancing the outside, rather than having the outside world or the inside world, the extrovert and the introvert as a choice, it should be something that is balanced. It should be a two-way process. And that's why I believe that Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces are the preconception, the plan of the zodiac as it comes into Aries, because everything comes out of a leap of faith and knowledge and practicality, which is all about Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces. But it's all come into know what it is with its identity in that first house, know what it's worth and its values with the second, but it's all done through the process of thinking with Gemini in the third. So it must, whatever came up over that horizon already has given energies that can be used with a leap of faith, which is what allows everything to be. So the affirmation of life, and seeing that as an art and embracing life as an experience, and alma fati, if you want to call it that, is the end game of expression of the individual by using astropsychology.
Well, we have about 6 minutes. Maybe you'd like to give your website again and direct people to your program.
Okay, yeah, sure. There are a number of links. If you want to join me on Facebook, it's facebook.com Nemiel.amaranthi. I'll give you a link for that shortly, Chrissy. And there is a Facebook like page, which is facebook.com/astropsychology UK. The home page for my work, my own domain, is astropsychology.co.uk. My email address is nemus@astropsychology.co.uk. And is it okay if I just explain briefly how to obtain a reading if anyone's interested?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone would be interested in a reading, you can go to astropsychology.co.uk/readings. And on that page, there will be a set of instructions, but I'll go through them now. Once you've paid for a reading and have confirmation of it, I will require the time, date and location of your birth in which the chart will be generated. Then I ask for life experience, or as I've abbreviated for this paradigm, LE. So you provide those details with the LE. And of course, any questions that you want to know, anything you want to know about yourself. The readings take 7 days to prepare, because I like to be able to absorb the chart and go over any new information. There's a lot of things that can change in the way that I perceive a chart in 7 days, so that's why I give myself plenty of time. Once the chart has been concluded, I'll record it to video. It'll be shared via an unlisted link to your private email address. You can share it with whoever you like. However, with your permission, I can share it via my YouTube channel. And it can be used as a study aid for other people. I also offer a dream interpretation service as well now. This is a new service. It costs £15, and I can interpret dreams for you, and it can be used with the same objectives that I was talking about here. There's a drill in the background, which is quite annoying.
No, that's absolutely fine, and thank you so much, Nemus. This discussion's been just amazing. I'm glad you got the opportunity to share the wonderful work that you're doing and your links on the web. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we close? We have about 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, as I say, it's an evolving philosophy. And I'm always willing to share ideas with people all the time. You know, so even if you don't want a nature chart, I'm more than happy to go over any concepts with you if you contact me at the Facebook links that will probably be available for this video, or if you've noted them down. If you go to there, if you add me as a friend, I'll add you, and we can, I'll discuss anything you want with you one-to-one. And as I explained, after you've had a natal chart reading or dream interpretation, and dream interpretations are, again, something quite new to the paradigm, but because I like to incorporate a lot of Jungian analysis, dreams were a very important part of knowing who we are. And again, it goes into the reflective nature of the moon and the inner world, which we externalise. But after you've had a reading or a dream interpretation, I always offer one-to-one support, either via email or Facebook. And I'm also on Twitter, twitter.com/astropsychology. And the hashtag is #astropsychology if you ever want to keep up to date with what's going on my channel, or on Facebook, or with anything that I find. I always share with people if there's any new insights, and I try and make a video a week. And keep an eye out also, I'm currently writing a book about my findings and the work and the paradigm as a whole, which I've been working on for the past few weeks. So that's something to look forward to as well. That'll hopefully come to a publication, so that I've got everything in one complete compressed volume. It'll include all the concepts and ideas that I've explained today, but obviously much more in detail and manageable chapters and all put together. So yeah, things are very busy just lately, and but I still like to share the videos, and hopefully the book will be coming out soon. I just love to interact with people all the time and discuss astropsychology with people. It's what I want to do, and I'm more than willing to encourage people to do the same, because it's such a great way to understand the self and do it in manageable chunks. So it's really a great thing.
Well, I want to say thank you again, Nemus. Our time is up, and we have to go.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to
play
the jingle. Absolutely, and you have a wonderful day.
You're listening to Awake Radio. Straight talk for the awake and aware.
Chrissy, I'm very
You've been listening to Alchemical Connections with Chrissy McMahon, and we're going to turn over to Granada Steve, and thank you so much. One more time.
You see what sending out them negative waves did, Moriarty?
But oddball, I did try and tell them, but they won't listen. I tried.
Sure.
But I did try.
Oh, man. Don't hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
But I can't force them to listen. I can't.
Always with the negative waves, Moriarty. Always with the negative waves.
Have a little faith, baby. Have a little faith.
But I keep trying. Oddball, I keep trying. But they won't listen. They won't tune in. They really won't.
Why don't you knock it off with them negative waves? Why don't you dig how beautiful it is out here? Why don't you say something righteous and hopeful for a change?
Tune in to Awake Radio for your